Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Jonathan. I'm the host of the Exercism podcast and I'm joined with Lars today, who is, where are you based currently, Lars?
I'm in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Nice, cool. So a little bit north of the equator. I'm very much south of the equator at this point in time. Really good to have you on today's show. Really pleased that we could have this chat. And I'm just going to kick straight off into this week's show. So Lars, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into tech? How did you end up where you are currently?
Yeah, let's see. Where am I currently? As we discussed, Copenhagen. But mainly working in consulting in the area of SAP, custom code ABAP. And how did I end up there? Yeah, as usual, it's a long story. But it's tech, so let's talk about tech, right? So when I was young, that's a long time ago, me and my identical twin, I have an identical twin. Yeah.
You've got an identical twin? So how do I know it's not your other twin?
He's doing Microsoft stuff.
Okay.
I'm doing SAP stuff.
Yeah.
So just ask him anything about SAP, then he cannot answer. Ask me anything about Microsoft, then I cannot answer.
Yeah.
But when we were young, we started playing on the Commodore 64, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember doing some very, very basic programming in the basic programming language on the Commodore on a black and white, very small TV screen, spending hours doing that. Getting a new computer, doing QBasic on the 386 and the 486 and upgrading to 8 megabytes of memory, right? Those were the days, yeah. Doing, that was QBasic, doing Pascal programming, eventually got into Windows, right? And I did a lot of Visual Basic. Yeah, I like Visual Basic. That was back in the 90s something, and eventually getting into running some Linux systems. Mm-hmm. And yeah, for those that remember the good old Linux days, there was the themes.org webpage where it was possible to download themes for different window managers. Very, very much a Linux thing. And I think that's the first time I got really involved with the community. Spending time on building that website in PHP. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Put some stamps on me doing Visual Basic, doing PHP programming. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Yeah, that's good.
And eventually going to university, doing a master in computer science and doing whatever programming. And randomly getting a small job as I need money to pay my rent, right? And doing ABAP programming, and that has been sticking with me for the last around 15 years of SAP ABAP custom code development.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so next question, why did it stick around, right? Because ABAP is not a very modern programming language. It's much like COBOL, but it's also a very interesting programming language because it's very wide, has a lot of different statements, and a lot of different things can go wrong.
Okay, so there's a lot of problem solving and a lot of kind of debugging. Is that the nature of it?
Yeah. So typically I say I do this kind of work because I really like debugging, and there is plenty of old code to debug, right? Mm-hmm. So just last week I was fixing an old program that was 20 years old. I was like, okay, cool. And there's always, when looking into an old program, that even though I've been doing this for many years, there's always some old new stuff to learn, and some old features that was been used and still runs day to day, right?
Okay. So you joined 15 years ago, the same company, or just started learning ABAP with SAP and moved to different companies?
Right now, where I'm at now, I have my own company.
Okay.
Doing fun stuff, and I define what fun is. And I've been doing also a lot of consulting for various consulting companies, and also worked as an intern. So now I'm doing freelance and doing some freelance work so I can pay my rent again. That's important. And
it sounds like a common theme in your life, which is pay the rent. Find ways to pay.
And yeah, spending too much time on open source projects, getting off track into something challenging.
Yeah. So do you have a team of people that you work with as part of your business, or are you fairly on your own in that sense? And what does it look like day to day or in the week with your work?
Yeah, so I'm on my own and I have my own company. But when talking about collaboration, I do collaborate with the customer, right? And then in the open source space, I also have a lot of good friends in the open source community that helps out with some stuff every now and then, and I help them out with some stuff here and then. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah. So you actually are fully responsible, I think, for building the ABAP track on Exercism, if I'm not mistaken, or you have a high level of involvement in building it.
High level.
Talk us through a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the ABAP track has been made up by various community members, and these are mainly community members from the ABAP Git open source project. So in ABAP, of course, we're a bit special, so we have to build our own Git client from scratch. But that's a different story for another day. Yeah. That's open source. So we had various people contribute to the Exercism ABAP track. However, the ABAP track is a bit special, right? Because ABAP is a programming language that's actually quite difficult to start up in, because you cannot just download like a JavaScript runtime like Node or a Python runtime. You cannot really do that very easily in ABAP. So the latest way to do this was a Docker container with 16 gigabytes as far as I remember.
16?
You need at least 32 gigabytes of memory to run this. And there's not a lot of people that actually has this infrastructure easily available. And also running on this kind of infrastructure would be impossible with Exercism, I guess. I don't know the infrastructure behind Exercism, but the Exercism tracks, it's all a lot of small Docker containers that starts up, runs the code, checks the exercise, and then shuts down again. Yeah. And just starting a Docker container of this size can easily take 10 minutes, right? So
no, sure.
So we kind of needed a different approach, and luckily I had been working on static analysis stuff for ABAP. Started some years ago, and it has abstract syntax trees. So we actually take this ABAP code and make it into JavaScript code, and then run it on Node and give the feedback on Exercism. So we say that it is not the official language that we support as ABAP, and also ABAP is a bit special, as I noted a few times before now, that there is no real nice official description of the ABAP language as such. Not like other languages that has been designed. I think ABAP has mainly evolved into what it is from the 70s or whenever it was started. So we make it up as we go.
So what challenges does that kind of create on like a day-to-day work thing for you? I guess because you have to be able to look at a problem with fresh eyes every day and try and get into the mind of the person who developed it, because you have very little. Is it right in saying that you have very little documentation to refer to? So
there is kind of documentation, but it's not. It is just in text, and it's not always 100% correct. So the correct way is to try the code and see what it actually does, right? Of course, there's a lot of things in the language that is correct, but also when people that work and build things in an SAP ABAP system, we typically are multiple developers in one system, and this one system has 200 plus million lines of ABAP code and 80,000 plus database tables.
Wow.
Which is good. I like monoliths, and especially if you build everything very close together, you get a lot of cool static analysis that can tie things together. Whereas if you do a Microsoft architecture, it's all loosely coupled. There is pros and cons in both, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you prefer the monolith setup from a? Would that be a fair comment, or is that a little bit?
Yeah.
Whatever you prefer.
Yeah, I do prefer monoliths. Yeah. Okay, so Visual Basic, PHP, prefer monoliths. Yeah, cool. That's fine.
Legacy code. Yeah, all stuff that's been around. All of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I like old stuff. It's pretty fun, right? I typically say that when I get old, I want to go into a PL1 or APL programming, some of those program languages. I don't know. I can probably do that on Exercism too, right? At some point.
Probably. I mean, we've got everything under the hood at this point. Let's just see what we've got. ABL. Did you say APL or ABL?
APL. Oh, there's no APL track one.
Oh, maybe there's an opportunity.
PLSQL, there's no PL1. Okay. That's two new tracks that somebody in the community can help.
Well, you're signing up for right now. So that's okay.
No, so what does this look on a daily basis in, for instance, the ABAP track? So the ABAP track is an approximation of what is correct, right? And we always try to move it one step closer to being 100% correct. So we actually have people with correct solutions that just doesn't work on Exercism. Okay. Because of this strange transpiler setup. But step by step, day by day, it starts working right, and you just keep adding more and more unit tests to the backend and to the Exercism runner and everything, and then hopefully someday it will be 100% perfect. But
who knows what's going to come from at that point. So now, how many clients do you typically work with during the week? Is it one or two or three, or can it be up to 10?
Just one or two.
Okay, and that's been like an ongoing thing for a while.
Yeah. I've been doing consulting for many years now.
Mm-hmm. And is it mainly focused in Copenhagen, or did during the pandemic did you get opportunity remote further afield? Like, what's your kind of, do you travel much?
I have been traveling much in my younger days, but now I just typically sit at home doing remote work. Okay. It's easy.
Yeah. You keep your coffee machine warm.
Yeah.
Keep things kind of ticking over. So Lars, now you said you sort of grew up programming from quite a young age, and you were interested in that sort of from a fairly young age. Did programming at any point did it make sense to you at some point? Was there a moment when you were like, it sort of clicked for you, or was it something that just sort of you naturally sort of understood from a young age? Like, how would you describe that?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I think I've always understood kind of doing programming, right?
Yeah.
But typically, so my younger days, it's always been procedural programming. Mm-hmm. So I remember sometime in the university, right, there was this introduction to like functional programming and logical programming. Mm-hmm. There's like two completely different paradigms to actually do programming. And so there's a prologue, as far as I know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a prologue track on Exercism. So for those that have not tried doing logical programming, I recommend trying to do some prologue programming, and standard ML is probably also there to figure out that actually you thought you knew procedural programming, but there's also a lot of other things that you can do. So yeah, I learn new stuff every day. So it has not clicked yet.
You're still kind of wrestling with everything. No, it's just interesting because my experience has been that I have to immerse myself in something, in like a language and then suddenly the concepts which are foreign, and then overnight something will shift, and it's almost like, oh wow, that makes complete sense. And some of the others I've spoken to on the podcast have said, yeah, they have had a similar experience, and I was like, well, how did you do that? And they're like, oh, one girl was like, oh, I just imagine a program like a story, and I have the functions of characters and all this kind of stuff. So that was really interesting. But how did you decide that like ABAP was the thing that you were going to like full on focus on? Was it just like, oh, this pays the rent, or was it kind of, I just really like this, I prefer it to JavaScript or whatever? And
well, getting into a programming language always starts by random, right? So doing Visual Basic started by random, doing ABAP started by random, and it kind of just stood out as a kind of a very challenging programming language because it's so big in different statements. Like Java and JavaScript doesn't really have very much statements. It has a large library. So I typically compared that in ABAP we have a lot of library things as part of the programming language, whereas in JavaScript you call different, you use the same kind of language construct to call the libraries, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was almost like you just almost randomly discovered ABAP. And so what, looking ahead now then in the next sort of 10 years, I mean, I don't know if you want to even think that far, but what does the next 5 to 10 years look like for you in terms of programming and business? Like, have you got any sense of, oh, this is where I'd like to be, this is what I would like to be doing? Like,
you never really know, right? So I continue things as long as I think they're fun, right? If they're not fun anymore, then I'll drop it and do something else. Okay. That's my big plan, right? Because it has to be fun to make it work day to day, in my opinion, right? And it is probably ABAP on the menu in 10 years still, I think. Yeah. And it comes a bit down to that I'm quite picky when it comes to programming languages and technology. So I do ABAP and I do JavaScript/TypeScript. And then I try not to get into any other language at all.
Yeah. Okay. So, but if I was to say, okay, Lars, you have to drop ABAP and JavaScript now, and you have to pick up another programming language, do you have any idea which one you would be like, yeah, I'll do that?
Yeah. So we already talked APL. It's,
okay. Yeah.
A very cool, very probably older than me programming language. I don't know, close to at least. APL and PL1, I think they're both older than ABAP.
Okay, wow. So why those ones, out of interest? Like, what intrigues you about those?
So APL is like, I've not really tried, but there's a few simulators on the internet that you can try. It's a lot of Greek letters where everything is kind of a matrix multiplication. I know it just looks very, very strange and kind of stupid, but that is also what makes it fun, right? It has to be some kind of challenge. And PL1 is just kind of ABAP, but something different. I'm not sure.
Something mysterious and a little bit.
Yeah. Not really. I like to go for the old classical stuff and not all the new fancy stuff. So I could probably say Rust. Probably get into Rust someday, but that's not really. It's just because I need to. It's not because I want to.
Yeah, and do you notice that the number of people doing ABAP is declining or increasing, or has there been a resurgence in the language lately? What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's quite difficult. And as ABAP is these big systems that run internally in large multinational corporations, it's quite difficult to get some real public numbers that are correct on what is the numbers actually. But the rumor is that the age of the developers that knows this by heart is increasing and going closer and closer to getting off the market.
Okay.
So kind of like COBOL, right? So it's an old language, not young people doesn't find it too much fun, right? So it's kind of old people like me. But that's also why we actually did the ABAP track, right? We want to get more young people into the language, and Exercism is a good platform to try out a lot of different languages, check them out, and it's very easy to get started. It's a single click, log in, start doing some ABAP code, done.
Yeah. And have you noticed, have you seen a lot of people doing the track, the ABAP track?
Yes, we have close to 5,000 students now.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so here in September, there was a September community code challenge that was organized by the SAP developer advocates. So trying to get people on the platform, trying out some exercises with what we call internal tables. In other languages, these are typically arrays, but we call it internal tables. And nested internal tables, which is typically referred to as double arrays, right, in other programming languages. So we got a lot of new students on that, and also we got a lot of feedback and bugs and issues on GitHub, and that's also a thing that we're not really used to in the ABAP world, collaborating across multiple organizations, actually sharing some code on GitHub. It's not something that is very typical in the community yet.
Okay. Is that just because the people, it's been very siloed in terms of this company does its thing and then another company does its thing, and so the developers don't really talk much. They're in their specific context, and the sharing and the collaboration is a little bit less, or why is that?
It's also due to the nature of an SAP ABAP system, because it's a standard system. It can do anything for you, right? So typically when I help customers, it's because the customer needs something special.
Yeah.
And it's something special according to what makes their business unique. So it's probably something that other customers cannot use, and also would not really use because that customer is unique in a different way than a different customer, right? But there is an open source community evolving, sharing code, but it is typically on the level of utility stuff like logging and error handling or something. But it will get there. It just takes 5+ years in the SAP world for anything.
Yeah, just for everything to kind of start gaining that traction. So that's one of the things that we ask everyone who comes on the show, and you might have seen the document that I sent you, but we typically ask people, what is the one opinion or perspective that you would hold and not compromise on in the tech scene? Or typically, what is the one hill that you would die on in the tech scene to make sure that thing stands forever and ever? And it can be as silly as I always write my logic after my CSS if you're in the front end, or it can be really trivial, or it could be something like I will never use GitHub, for example. But you just have to be able to argue or present your point well thought through. But what is that one thing, that one opinion that you would...
One opinion.
Okay, I can give you two. I can give you two. Three. Okay, three. You can have three opinions, because I know that technical people are not very opinionated at all, typically. So.
I think if people would describe me, then sometimes I have very strong opinions about IT, and so one of my main opinions is say no. Saying no, this will not be possible. Do something else that better fits with the solution and the technology. So say no to using tools like Jenkins. Say no to Jenkins. That's one of the tools that I like to mention that nobody should use, right? Because Jenkins.
Why is that? Well, what is the reason for that?
It's a lot easier to have your pipelines close to the code. So if you typically, I just consider it obsolete.
Okay. So it's like a level of abstraction that doesn't need to be added in if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. And there's other tools that do things better. Another tool that I like to skip is Eclipse. So in the Java world, if you look back like 5-10 years, the Eclipse editor has typically been used for building Java code. And from my perspective, this is at a point where Eclipse is not even used to build Java code anymore. It's typically some big enterprise applications and stuff used in Eclipse and building an Eclipse that it was not really intended for in the beginning. There's many other ways to do this and lots of other tools to choose from. So Eclipse is Eclipsed.
Okay, yeah, I like it. And I'm going to give you one more opinion. What is the other third opinion?
White space. Oh, it's white space. So one of my side projects is static analysis for ABAP, right? And actually in ABAP, we have a lot of different statements, a lot of different ways to do indentation and uppercase and lowercase and Hungarian notation, everything, and having double spaces somewhere in a text and something that really sets me off.
Is that just because it throws everything and it just nightmare to
it just gets you off track and reading a text or a piece of code. Oh, there's two spaces here between. What? Oh, that's not going to do. It gets me off guard every time. So Jenkins, see your pipelines, get it close to the code, key. Eclipse, not necessary, and double white space. Yeah.
Those. Well, I've given you 3 opinions, which range in severity, it seems. So no, that's really cool. No, that's great, and yeah, I think you managed to hold your ground nicely on those.
And also when talking about continuous integration, right? Don't make continuous integration into continuous waiting.
Okay, so like push a code, then it sits there and waits to be PR'd.
Is that what you mean? Get the feedback fast to the developer instead of having them wait an hour or 2 hours for any feedback. Yeah.
Okay, so is that because systematically it's a fail safe? Is that why that's in there? Is it just to kind of pause so that things can be reviewed, or
no? It's just architecture, bad architecture.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Okay, so final question then for today. I hope you've enjoyed yourself so far, but I wanted to ask you this. What recommendations do you have for the Exercism community for this week? If you could recommend one thing for the community, what would it be? It could be anything. Eat sushi, go and jump in a river, whatever it would.
Of course, try out the ABAP track.
Okay.
That's probably not what you're looking for.
I'll give you the free. That's a free one. That's a free one. Okay.
But of course, as noted a few times before, remember to have fun. Yep. It has to be fun. So sometimes, even though there is some strange ideas, but if it's fun, try it out. See what happens. So that's typically also what I say in creating open source projects. Just jump into it, see if it's fun or not. Try it out. If it doesn't work, that's fine. Then jump up to the next party. Or open source project or programming language.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things to do in the tech world and outside the tech world that it's not really worth it if you're bored all the time, right?
Yeah. No, sure. No, that's a good recommendation. So anyone out there, go have some fun in the tech space. Lars, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Just stay on while when I stop the recording, we'll just touch base at the end. But just wanted to say a huge thank you. And anyone out there who's interested, go and check out the ABAP track. Go and run some exercises on it. Go and see how you get on with it. And if you want to learn something that has been around for a while and is back growing, I guess, in importance and influence, you could say, because it underpins a lot of core multinational platforms, people that you would recognize, companies that you would recognize. If you want to learn the inside track, then ABAP is definitely worth checking out. Lars, we'll put all of the show links that you might have in the description below when we get there. But in the meantime, thank you so much, and I'll check you in a second. But yeah, thanks again. Appreciate it.